Good morning. This meeting of the Caldwell County Board of Education is called to order. This work session, we have Chris Blumgarn joining us virtually. And the board has been out this morning and we've enjoyed our morning visiting 4 different schools. First at Hudson Middle School, and then Sawmills and Granite Falls Elementary School. And we wrapped up at Happy Valley. We always enjoy getting out into the schools and seeing what's going on, and talking to the principals, the teachers, seeing what students are doing. We will move on with our agenda today, and I would like to ask if we have a motion to approve the agenda, or
Mr. Chairman, if I could, with the board's permission, I'd like to reverse items 3A and 3B and do 3B first, and then have the conversation time needed to take care of 3A.
okay, do I hear a motion we accept the agenda as amended with 3A being moved to 3B, 3B being moved to 3A?
Chairman Hill, I move that we approve the agenda as has been amended.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion passes. So agenda is approved. This time I'd like to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Don Phipps.
I want to give you an update on the Valmead West Lenore comprehensive study that you asked us to take a look at. We've had an opportunity, Dr. Griffin and Dr. Church and I went out to both faculties and just talked with them about what we're looking at, and the fact that a comprehensive study doesn't mean that a decision has been made, but we're simply looking at what outcomes may be possible. And they certainly are aware of what consolidation of schools could potentially involve, and the attendance line redrawing and things like that. But I'm at a point where I have some a certain amount of discomfort, and I just want to share that with you. I feel like I need to be honest, not about the decisions and what may ultimately happen, but I'm concerned about where we're at right now, and the fact that we've got numbers because of COVID that we really can't put pen to paper and give you an exact number. And I feel like our enrollment numbers are going to be so close and critical in terms of what could happen with the decision that ultimately made, that we need to be accurate, very accurate with our numbers. And I feel like after school starts back in the fall and the dust is settled back to whatever normal is for us, we'll have a much better idea of ADM at our schools, any of the schools that are involved. And while I'm not saying that I think this should cease and go away, I think we should pause just that part of it until the school year starts in the fall, and allow us to pick up the comprehensive study piece and look at all of our numbers and do our focus groups and things like that, starting in probably early October, or early September, late August after the school year gets started. Would be a recommendation that I have. Again, not to I don't even want to say table. I think it's just a matter of giving us time to get accurate data so that we can give you a good picture. What I would not want to do would be to make a decision on a consolidation, and then as soon as school starts back and the students show up, we end up being in a situation where we don't have enough space. And I'm not suggesting that would happen. I don't know what would happen, because I don't know. You know, some of the students that are either at Caldwell Connect or maybe doing things at home this year may have had address changes too. And until they re-register with us, we're not going to know physically where they are. And just my feeling, and I know the feeling that Dr. Griffin and Dr. Church have had as we've looked through the numbers. We understand where we're headed and what we ultimately need to look at and consider, but we're not ready to make any specific recommendations to you at this point because of the lack of clarity in our numbers, if that makes sense.
Okay, so there's no need to vote on anything there. We're just delaying that until the fall, when the numbers can be established.
And with that being done, we certainly would reach out to the teachers and parents and folks and let them know that we'll have another year like we are now, but we'll continue to look at this topic. I'd love to have a decision made by the Christmas break in December so that everybody knows what's going to ultimately happen, and we can address the allocations and things like that need to be done.
So Dr. Phipps, even if we looked at that into, like you said, in Christmas, we still would not, or would we try to do that consolidation in the middle of the year, or we would still wait until, I guess that'd be the end of 22, I think?
My preference would be to do any kind of a move like that over the summer.
Sure.
Say
Okay.
you leave
Okay.
one school year and you start the next school year in your new location.
Okay.
Okay, you want to proceed with
Yes,
the next item?
Item 3B now is return to school discussion with possible action. And you all are well aware, I want to say to the public, that there's not been a decision that's been made by this body or the administrative staff or anybody from the school system for over a year, when we go back to March of last year now, plus a couple of days, that hasn't been painstakingly thought through. And I think every one of us wake up in the middle of the night or have trouble going to sleep at night because we've got so many things that are on our mind. Teresa and I were talking this morning about what things were like at the beginning of all of this when the school year started in August. And we've learned and we've grown because we've experienced some things that nobody had ever experienced before. But what we've had on our side has been a team of medical leaders in our community, in our county, that have given us tremendous advice, and we've leaned on that. And we've listened to the feedback that we've gotten from parents and students and teachers and faculty and staff, and we certainly have gotten a lot of that in the last, I'm sure you all have too, in the last week or so. There's also not been a single decision that we've made that was perfectly in a place where everybody loved it, in the community or employees or anything like that either. And that's tough when you know you're making decisions that right off the bat, you're gonna have people that are upset with that. And I think that's very evident, again, in the email responses that I've gotten over the last few weeks, that the opinions vary widely and people have different places, where they land. I think at the end of the day, we've got to look at what's best for our students, and we've got to try to do what we need to do as a school district. My preference would be that we have students back 5 days a week, K-12, and that we get back to as normal a schedule as possible. Now, I'll say that's my preference, but I also understand that we're living in a world where we've got a lot of questions and there are a lot of concerns. And every one of those that I've read in an email is something either that we've addressed as we've planned or something that we know that we've got to take care of. Because ultimately, if the decision is made to go to Plan A, and I guess I need to go back for folks that may be listening or may follow this up later on, a bipartisan bill was passed last week. It was Senate Bill 220, and it was a reopening of Schools Act of 2021. And what it basically did was to require the schools that had not come back to in-person learning to provide an in-person component. And for us, we've been ahead of the game in many ways, and I don't mean that to pat myself on the back or for you to pat yourself on the back. A lot of the things that school districts are now going to have to make a decision to begin to do, we've been doing, and we've been doing it for a while. One of the options is to go back to a 4-day schedule, which we've done, and we've got our cleaning days and things that are going on our cleaning days. If you choose to go to Plan A, you have to be a part of the Duke Collaborative, the ABC Collaborative, which we've been a part of, and we're participating in that, and there's some data collection that has to be submitted. But that's something that we're already familiar with and that we're comfortable with. But it's just different this year. There's not anything that we've done that has felt normal. Athletic seasons are out of whack. We have restrictions on spectators. We have restrictions on movement in buildings. It's just different. It's just a different school year. And I am personally looking forward to getting to the end of the year to be able hopefully to exhale and look back on the things. I don't think it's a wasted school year. I don't think it's a lost school year. I think it's a different school year. And I know our teachers are concerned about end of year types of things. I know teachers are worried about testing. I want to make sure that our students have been loved on and taken care of, and families have been reached out to, and we followed and communicated where everybody is at. I have no doubt that every student that we have in our school system across the state, across this country, is going to be behind to some degree when the school year is over, simply because we've had a limited amount of time for the great instruction that normally goes on in our classrooms. So we've got some work to do. There's also a bill that is going through the chambers in the General Assembly that may have some guidance for us on what summer school would look like, a much broader summer school than we've ever had. And it'll be offered on a voluntary basis, but we don't have details on that, but it will be a K-12 bill that will be offered. Right now it's 150 hours of summer school, and we'll have to figure out those details when and if that law is passed. But we know there's so many moving parts and pieces. You know, we've distributed almost, if we're not over it yet, we've almost distributed 2 million meals in our community, which I think is a phenomenal effort, given the number of students that we have and folks in our community, the work that our child nutrition department has done with the volunteers that have helped them, and the things that have been done at school. Our school nurses have worked as if we had 3 times as many nurses, but we haven't. But they've been able to get the things done because of their work and the people that have volunteered to help them in the roles. And the people in the schools, whether they're, you know, doesn't matter what the titles are, faculty and staff members and administration have just risen to the challenge to do what we need to do. And I'm proud of them for that. But I think we're at a point where our board has to make a decision. What do we do moving forward? And the opportunity that's available, not just for us, but for anyone across the state, would be to move to Plan A. And I want to stress to you the difference between Plan B and Plan A. Plan B requires you to maintain the 6 foot of social distancing between students. And we were not allowed until this piece of legislation passed last week to have students in 6th through 12th grade in any setting other than a setting that provided 6 feet of social distancing. Plan A allows you to bring those students back at a minimal social distance. There's not a number that's there. My understanding, and I want to say that it's my understanding, at some point the CDC may very well change their guidance and recommendation to 3 feet. With full disclosure, I can't tell you that we would have 3 feet in between every student in every single classroom, and I think you need to know that. But there's not anything in the guidelines that says it needs to be 6 feet or 3 feet. If you get a Plan A, it's minimal social distancing. The other requirement in that plan is that we send a notice to the Department of Health and Human Services, but we've been told that the Department of Health and Human Services won't have the right to reject or veto a plan. But I think they do want to know what we're doing and make sure, and I would suppose, and I don't know because we've not gone through it, but I would suppose if there were concerns in terms of the methodology and practices being used, they would contact you and tell us what we need to do differently. And our plan would be that we would maintain the maximum amount of social distancing possible in situations. Does that come with fears? No doubt it comes with fears in terms of what we've been trying to do and what we've done and done well. We have more of our staff members vaccinated clearly than we did when we were thinking about a return back in January, just because it's available. But not all of our staff members have had their 2nd vaccine. And that may take us into the end of the month of April or the first part of May before all of those who want a vaccine have had the 2nd round and they're beyond that time period where they're fully protected. And those things have come up in the conversations that we've had. But I feel like the social and emotional needs of our students are critical. The academic needs of our students are critical. I've heard a lot about what students, particularly at the high school level, are engaged and involved in right now in a productive way. But we're a school system, and we're responsible for educating our youth. And when we can do that to the maximum level possible, I think it's something that we need to look at. I don't know how you all feel. I wanted to have an opportunity for you all to ask questions. I don't think this board has ever made a decision based on what people around us are doing. I think we've always looked at what individuals around us are doing and put that food for thought. But I don't think a decision's ever been made here that in a way that we wanted to match or keep up with what a peer county is doing. But there have been a lot of decisions that have been made, and people are in different places than we are. And I think we have to do what we feel like is best in this county for our students and our families and our faculty and our staff. So I wanted to ask if there are particular questions or any thoughts or ideas that you all have. The other thing is, if a change is made, we've got to talk about timing, because on our calendar, what we have down the road just a few weeks is going to be spring break. And if something happens, if a decision is made, does that happen? Where does it happen in relation to before, after spring break, or what kind of timing are we dealing with? So there are a number of things I think we have to cobble together, information and pieces of data as much as we can, and then try to make as firm a decision as we can so we can share that information moving forward.
Other than the 6 foot restriction for Plan A, it does not change anything as far as the mask, wearing mask. I mean, basically that's the only decision. I mean, I know there's more to it, but as far as that portion of the plan is just strictly less space between students. They still wear the mask, they still we'll still do all the cleaning and sanitizing
And that's a good point to make. Masks would still be required. The only difference between A and B really is the amount of distances required between individuals. And we've done a lot of work, the cleaning work, the wiping down, the cleaning. We haven't had flu, we haven't had strep to the degree and the level that we've had in the past. And I truly believe it's because of the masks. I think if you had to circle one particular thing, I think the masks have been critical in addition to all the other things that we've done. And we certainly will continue to do all those other things. Now, I will tell you that quarantining, the requirements from CDC are being changed a little bit now that we've got folks coming out of the vaccine and being protected. So the close contact rules may change a bit. As we have more students in classrooms and they're potentially closer together, particularly at the middle and high school level, because we would potentially be moving from B to A, the number of students quarantined could go up because you've got students that are closer together. And we have to determine what those close contact rules and guidelines are, working with the health department to determine who would be quarantined in close contact. Our numbers have come down significantly, and we were pushing. At the point that I was concerned was when we came back after Christmas and we were looking at our numbers in January. We started to approach the number in my mind that I was looking at was we would get to a point of having 800 students quarantined. And now we're down in the 100 plus. We're in the 150, 175 numbers. That doesn't mean that they're positive. That just means that they've been in close contact. Our staff numbers were pushing up toward 80 and they're down in the mid 20s. And we've been having single digits if we have positives at all. So I think what we see in the school system is reflective of what we're seeing in the county and what we're seeing across the state. And there are a variety of reasons why those things have happened. What I don't want to do is let our guard down. And I want us to be vigilant. I want us to make sure that we keep up the procedures that we have in place that are operational when students are in school, because I do believe that they work. And we need to make sure that we continue that. If you decide to go to Plan A, it has some reciprocal impacts. And some of those are things like prom and graduation and what they look like. My understanding is that the governor may have a press conference today or shortly that may address some of these things that would get things back in line with what we're potentially going to be looking at, but haven't heard that from the governor yet. As far as capacities at athletic events and what we can do with proms and what graduations would look like, those are things we still got questions about, but we knew that rather than making a decision early on and saying we're going to stick to this and this is a firm decision, we've said all along, possibility of some changes based on guidance that we get. And we've had to do that for 12 plus months now. Everything that we've decided and put in place, there were things that came up that changed it a little bit. Some of them knocked us a little bit to one side or the other, and then some we felt like put us on a completely different set of tracks. But we tried to respond to that. Those things happen about every 2 weeks, and I don't like planning with only 2 weeks. I like to be able to know exactly what's going on from now to the end of the school year, but I haven't been able to do that because we didn't know what the rules were going to be.
Dr. Phipps, in the sage advice that you've been receiving from Anna Martin and from the UNC Healthcare and others, do you have any updates for our consideration?
We met with both Anna Martin and Dr. Lowry on Monday afternoon. And the question that I posed was that if we went back to school 5 days without having that cleaning day, how do you feel? And I really asked that question because I thought that's the reaching as far as we can reach would be as close to normal as we could be. And they're both comfortable with the guidelines and the procedures that we have in place as long as we don't back those off. I think Dr. Lowry gave great advice to us, and that is that the move toward normalcy, as he called it, needs to be gradual. And we have to look at steps that we can take and not just go from A to the end of whatever it is and say we're normal again. We've got to do that in steps and stages. So there's some things about things like proms and graduations and those kinds of things I think we have to look at. But if you move to Plan A and you have students that are really close to each other without those social distancing requirements in place, I think it does have an impact on what you do in extracurricular activities. It makes no sense to me for us to tell students they have to do that from 8 o'clock until 3:30, but then at 3:30 when the bell rings, you have a different set of standards. And in some ways, we've had to do that because of what the rules and the laws are. But there's value in the cleaning. There's a perceptual value, I think, in the eyes of many stakeholders of what happens on a Wednesday with cleaning day. certainly there's been value in planning. So I'm not discounting that either. Again, my preference would be back 5 days a week, and we will be at that point at some point. I certainly hope that no matter what decision is made here today and in the rest of this year, that when the school year starts in August, it's a 5 day a week for everybody's school year. But that remains to be seen in terms of what we're dealing with. We don't know what the impact of spring break will be, but we feel like there are fewer folks out there that could potentially have COVID or pass COVID. The numbers are smaller, but there may be some increase in that. We don't know if there'll be an increase when we get back to school. We'll have to monitor those numbers. And I would say we always reserve the right to come back to you and say, we feel like we need to adjust something based on what we see happening in our schools.
So Dr. Phipps, I had a couple of things that seem to be major concerns for me. And one is how much time, or do you guys feel from an administrative level that you could handle, the major changes in the bus routes, restocking the cafeterias, for full occupancy, and then how would we handle the potential staff changes for the Caldwell Connect versus on-site? And that's 3 separate questions, but I mean, that's not just a flip of a switch. There's a major planning and details that need to be put out to accommodate that.
Well, and that's an excellent question. All 3 of them. There's a story to be told about what's happening behind the scenes that the public never sees. And it's a tremendous amount of work and time that goes in to getting all the details in place and able to allow us to have school happen. We couldn't make a decision today and say we're going to do it next week. We just don't have enough time to turn around. We've got furniture that has to be moved. We have rooms that have to be rearranged. We have food that has to be ordered. We have toilet paper, supplies, just things like that you might not be thinking about. And then we have to make sure child nutrition has the amount of food that's needed in the cafeterias, and we're looking at that. Just as we think through this, not knowing what decision the board was going to make, my inclination would be that there wouldn't be any changes in Caldwell Connect and in person. And the reason for that is we don't have the ability to start swapping staff out back and forth. We always listen to extraordinary circumstances and situations, and we would do that in this case as well. But I would hope that we'd be able to hold on to the teachers in the locations where we have them and students in the locations where they are to finish out the school year. But you're right, there's probably, most likely biggest issue that we're going to have to deal with is bus routes and how we handle the students sitting on the buses. We're looking at the guidance from the state on how we do that. How many buses would we need? Would we need double routes? We got to get all through the timing again, because a bus route right now on a Monday and Tuesday is going to look different. The bus route Monday, Tuesday looks different than the Wednesday, Thursday for elementary school. Is going to look different completely from that when school comes back. If we've got more students on the buses, middle school and things like that. Elementary is a little bit different because we've been doing 4 days. It's a bigger change for middle and high school. And I think that goes without saying that there's some adjustment there, not just for faculty and staff, but for students and parents and everybody involved.
Going back to the topic you were covering earlier with the spike in numbers, the worries about numbers, the numbers going up, and then now they're lower. For whenever the elementary went back to full 4 days a week, and then at one point we were at 5 days a week, did the numbers maintain pretty low? I mean, pretty normal? Was there a spike, I guess is what I'm saying, for the quarantines and the staff out? Was there a big difference between that and the middle school and high school?
We saw a number increase, but we were seeing that in the community as well. And I can't say that had direct correlations to students coming back. I think the numbers in society were increasing, and we were seeing that reflected in the schools.
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying. It was the average was going up, but it was going up for everyone, not just because they were back to 4 or 5 days a week, because the average went up also for the A-B plan, or for the B plan where they were AA or BB in middle and high school. So the numbers were going up across the board is what I'm saying.
And I think Robert can maybe address this because he's looking at numbers every day. But my recollection of looking at things, the students that would have been older middle school and high school age, those numbers increased at a higher rate than our elementary and middle school students did. And the middle and the elementary students were the ones that were in session 4 days a week.
Just generally speaking, the older you get, the more transmission you see in the
Right.
populations.
Right.
Could
Well,
could he speak a
we're
little
gonna get it
louder?
possible.
Could he speak a little louder?
We speak loud enough.
I'm sorry, the older the student's age, the more transmission follows the student. So that's why elementary is back at the level they are now. There's relatively less transmission amongst elementary kids. But as you get older, and as Mr. Sims mentioned, the more mobility you have, the more transmission potential you have. And that's shown, across the whole
Right, yeah.
demographic.
I think it's amazing, from the board's point of view, to see the immense amount of work that has gone on behind the scenes. Dr. Phipps and his cabinet and his staff. And, these people are meeting constantly and involved in Zooms probably on a daily basis. And they have met as well on a daily basis. They've had meetings with the Zoom, phone call meetings. I've been in on a couple of those, but with the nurses, Anna at the health clinic, and also Dr. Lowry has been on some of those. And so there's a lot going on behind the scenes that they have been involved with on a daily basis. Needless to say, this is something that is constantly on everybody's mind every single day. And as Dr. Phipps indicated, through the evening, a lot of times too, we're thinking about this and wondering about the direction that needs to take place. But we also understand that there are many needs on the part of our students, psychological needs, sociological needs, and that's just part of it. The academic growth has obviously not been as much as it would be if we didn't have this pandemic. So our academic needs are critical. We need to get our students back in school as safely as we can, as quickly as we can. And from the very beginning in this pandemic, we have indicated numerous times that we want to rely very heavily upon the medical personnel. Dr. Lowry's been very, very helpful. Laura Easton, at the CEO of the hospital, has been very, very helpful in her connections with the UNC epidemiologist down in Chapel Hill. The nurses, the health department, everybody has pitched in and helped out. And I think because of the effort that we have made, and, I'm not in these other counties around us, but I think that we may be in a better place than some of our fellow districts. But I think that we have a lot of people to thank for the intensity of the effort that they have put forth in getting us to this point. So, Dr. Phipps, we want to thank you and your staff, and certainly the doctors and nurses. And we also want to thank our teachers. Our teachers and the staffs in the school, the administrators, everybody is doing a great job. We were in schools today, we saw students that had their masks on. They had the directional arrows in the hallways, and just everybody's pitching in. It's just been a great effort, and we can't praise these people enough.
Dr. Phipps, can I ask one more question about the quarantine? I think you talked about that a little bit, but we would go back to a different formula potentially, due to the close contact and, I mean, there'd have to be some different guidelines because anybody in a classroom that tested positive and the whole class would go in quarantine under current guidelines. So would we look for guidance from the state on that, or like our local health officials, or?
It's always been the local health officials
Okay.
using the guidance either from the federal government or the state to determine what close contacts. And ours have been different than they've been in other parts of the state. We've been fairly consistently, I think, stringent, for lack of a better word. We could have gone to 10 days when many others did. We felt like 14 days was important because the health leaders in our county were telling us there were reasons why they felt 14 days. And I don't really need to know anything other than that. If you're a health leader and you've got that opinion, then I think we need to look at that and follow it. We would have to look at it from the standpoint of social distancing and points of contact throughout the day, which is why I said that, if we look at a particular student that may be positive today, there will be a certain number of students ultimately that will be close contacts. If the decision is made to get a plan A, that same student in that same classroom, the number of students that will be close contacts and ultimately quarantine may increase because of the amount of distance between them. And we have to work with the health department, and they look at every one of those situations on a case-by-case basis. The first question, and probably most important, would be face masks. And then questions come up about some things that we've got to work out. What about eating lunch and the use of the cafeteria? And we want to encourage folks to use outside as much as possible for classrooms and for eating, just because it's a better environment to be in with regard to virus spread than to be inside the classroom. So the use of cafeterias that are spaced out, students still eating in their classrooms, but also taking advantage of the ability to go outside. Those are things that we would have to work on and make sure that we have those protocols and expectations in place.
Okay.
I do want you to know, and again, I don't know about timing. I just know that we've got the spring break is going to be looming for us. Right now, we're out of school on Friday, the 2nd of April, and then we're out the entire week for students and staff for spring break, and then we come back on April the 12th. When we come back, there's 7 full weeks of school left. So, we're into the 4th quarter of where we are right now. And I think we've done really well to get to the point where we are without any other major hiccups or things that caused us to stop what we were doing. And I think we're there because we've been mindful of the guidance that we've been given, and we followed the protocol, and we haven't wavered from where we said we were going to be. We're at a place right now where there's an opportunity to do something a little different, but I want to make sure that we do that safely and that we don't create problems for ourselves.
Can I ask you a question about what Dr. Lowry, the statement you made? Because you said both Anna and Dr. Lowry felt like we could be going back to school, I understood to say 5 days. But you also followed that up with Dr. Lowry said to maybe gradually go into that is I can't remember the word that you used, but it's almost like, yeah, I support it, but I think it's something that should be taken in steps. Is the way I understood what you were saying. So
He said there needed to be a gradual return to normalcy. And that came out of the conversation about prom specifically. So if we go into a prom, what does prom look like? And his point that he made there was that you have to self-police to some degree to make sure that you're following the guidelines that are in place when you're in the prom. And that we may want to limit things like dancing or close dancing activities, that you don't just throw the door wide open and say we're back to normal. That there are certain procedures and protocols. And that also includes the PPEs and wearing masks and the cleaning and washing hands and all those things that we've been doing, that we don't want to throw those out and just say we're going back to normal.
was that in any way a suggestion to doing, if we chose to go back to remove the plan A, to go to 4 days in high school, to do 4 days of, and then have a Wednesday cleaning day, or whatever? And I'm just asking if that's part of what he was suggesting as part of his phasing back in, or that was not what he was talking about.
And Robert was in the meeting and maybe able to add to it. We never had a particular conversation about 4 days versus 5 days.
Okay.
My question was, if we go 5 days, knowing that we're losing this, and there's value of that Wednesday cleaning day, there is, for different reasons to different people. But my question to him was, if we were to eliminate that cleaning day, and you're not doing the deep cleaning, quote unquote deep cleaning that we do on Wednesdays, do you feel comfortable? And he had a comfort level as long as the other cleaning and the wiping down and things like that were going on. But I certainly don't think, and I don't want to speak for him, but I don't think either he or Anna will be opposed to a 4-day either. My thought process in having the conversation was if they're okay with 5 days, we can always back up and be a little bit more restricted and gradual as we progress. Robert,
The only thing that I would add, and everybody hear me, the only thing that I would add is as that conversation kind of progressed from the importance of kids being in class and then the extracurricular activities. So I think part of that gradual return to normalcy was prioritize education, that everything else that happens after school is less of what he was focused on. That was more of a gradual return to normalcy with all the extracurricular, but he was definitely putting a priority on, at this stage, we know how important it is for kids to be in school, in class. So that's kind of the way the
Well,
conversation.
I just wasn't sure because, as we'll say with everything that you hear something and everybody hears it different. And I wanted to make sure I understood what his gradual return was, that he was saying maybe do 4 versus 5, but that was not the case. That was basically get the schools opened up and then deal with the problem and deal with, as needs to be done.
and he stressed, it's not just the academic piece is obvious. We need students in for that, but it's a social and emotional piece of concern. And he sees that as in a practice, his practice, he sees it, I think from a variety of perspectives, and we do too.
If we were to go to Plan A, what kind of scheduling challenges would middle and high schools face? And how could we go?
I think, when we're talking about moving from, say, half of our students to a full class, obviously it's making sure we have the furniture in place to house all that, and then figuring out logistics of, do we keep the same patterns that we have? A lot of places have one-way hallways. Well, now that we have everybody in the building, can that still happen? And so I think a lot of, if that decision is made, then I think we sit down with principals and have to talk about what can we manage, what can we maintain, are there certain have-to-haves, and are there certain things that are recommended versus required based on the toolkit from DHHS? And then, certainly, as Mr. Becker mentioned earlier about we can't have people switching from Connect to face-to-face or, because we've kind of maxed out what we've got, and in some cases, principals I feel like they're serving the maximum amount that they can based on their personnel that have been pulled over to serve in Connect. So,
I think some of the biggest, most immediate things would be bus routes, classroom sizes and the space available, and how to maximize to make sure that we're providing as much social distance as we can. So you need to know what any given classroom has in it in terms of number of students, and then the amount of square footage and how the classroom is designed, working out issues like cafeteria and how that will work, traffic patterns. All of those things are things that we'll have to start doing immediately. But it's what we've been doing all year. It's what we've done, and we'll continue to do that. So it'll be a lot of work. It'll be putting some things in place that don't exist right now, but any change that we make involves that. There's not been anything that's happened that's been easy. It's been a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting by a lot of hands from individuals who are committed to making things work, and that will continue.
I know that anytime we have to make a change, our amazing teachers have adopted to that. And the students should be commended for accepting these changes.
And I want to be sure, Dr. Phipps, that I understand that whatever we decide today, it can be backed up if necessary with conditions. And we passed a resolution at one time that there are lots of things that are administrative decisions, and that will still be in place.
Until the board votes to take that away, that will be in place. And that primarily gave me the authority,
Yes.
if we needed to close an individual school down, that we could do that without having to come to the board and say we need to do that. And I think it's wise to keep that in place at least through the end of the school year. I really don't want that authority as we move forward, because I want the board involved and weighing in on everything that we do. But in an emergency situation, certainly you all will be notified, and we haven't had to deal with that. I hope that we don't, but that would be in place.
And it is true that we've only had one cluster in the school system.
We've had one cluster.
And then I need to be sure that I understand our sporting activities, which are so important to all of us. Those occur 5 days a week. Is that correct?
We would be back on basically a normal schedule with some limitations that we might impose. We have to, I'd like to see what the governor's going to announce when he makes his announcement, but we will be back to doing things more freely to whatever degree that is. I just don't know what limitations may be imposed by what he says today.
But currently, are they only doing them 4 days a week?
I think
Practices
our
and everything.
activities are 5 days.
So activities are already 5 days a week,
The guidelines are just
but
different.
the academics that we're doing are not. That's what I wanted to be sure I understood.
Well, and let me stress that the academic should be 5 days a week, because even if it's a remote learning day, there should be academic work that's going on with our students, but in-person instruction, even if you elect to go 4 days a week, we would still have 5 days of extracurricular activities, and those kinds of things would look more normal than they do right now. And that may be a place you want to go. There may be more comfort moving from where we are to 4 days a week than to go all the way to 5 days a week. I'm going to support, we're going to work to make successful whatever decision the board decides to do. And we'll make sure that we get the most out of everybody involved. But you've read the emails, you know what the concerns are. I'll share anything from my perspective, but the perspectives of the individuals writing those emails are a little bit different. You've heard from parents, you've heard from teachers. I've heard from students today that have sent me emails that have told me what they thought. And you all are aware of that. And I'm glad that we have a board that's willing to read. Even if an email just comes to me, I tell the individual that I'll make sure that I share it with the board and I send it on. And I know that you all read those things as well. Doesn't mean everybody gets what they want, particularly in terms of what the perfect decision would be, but it is put in the mix in terms of decisions and influences that you use to make your decisions.
And Dr. Phipps, one more question that may get long, but off the cuff, could you think of, or from a pro-con approach, the difference between 4 days versus 5 days, other than the kids are back in school 5 days versus 4 days? We know that, but any logistically, would that cause more problems to be 4 versus 5, or would the flow be? I'm just trying to think off the cuff what may be different logistically on a 4-day versus a 5-day schedule.
There's value in the Wednesday that we have, and people may have different opinions about that. I believe planning has been very strong. I believe the team meetings that are going on have been solid, and the amount of cleaning that goes on Wednesday is important. And I think if we say we're taking that away, there may be a feeling, and I can't speak for parents or teachers or other folks, a feeling that we're more at risk, which I don't think that we are. And Dr. Lowry felt that the cleaning and things that we could do, after school and between classes that are currently going on are adequate. But there may be that feeling. Obviously, 5 days of instruction face-to-face is much better than 4 days, it's clearly. But we're already into the 4th 9 weeks of what we've had and what we've done. Although exposure is good, I'm not sure that things are going to change significantly at the end of the year if we do 4 days or 5 days. It's a bigger shift in my mind for middle and high school students to go from 2 days to 5 than it is to go 2 days to 4. I think that would be easier to do that. But then you've also got a child care issue for families that are having to take care of children out in the community on Wednesdays when parents are having to work. So there's a pro and a con or a flip side to everything that we talk about. But I think you have to weigh in and make the best choice you can. I feel like families have gotten adjusted to where we are with the 4-day schedule. I don't think the child care, daycare stuff in the high school and middle school is nearly as big an issue. So I don't think that imposes that. There are students that we've been told are working part-time jobs that may wind up not being able to work. They certainly won't be able to work the same number of hours because they're in school, but these are high school students in school. I mean, their job really is to get the education, and to do that. And I applaud them for going out and working, and I encourage them to work after school or on weekends when we're back in on a regular schedule. But I hope that we don't use that as a reason to decide not to make a change.
And the Wednesday was kind of my deal there, because that was, other than the elementary school, that short period of time there went 5 days, that's been the one steady thing through all of this, was that Wednesday deep cleaning, the collaboration of staff, the parent meetings, IEP, so on and so forth. It's kind of what, the separation for me between the 5 and the 4. I was just looking for other ideas or other things that maybe I was not looking at, so.
And the planning will continue. If we get 5 days a week, will happen. It'll happen like it always has.
Sure.
And the cleaning will happen. It's just, it won't be a dedicated day on that.
Okay.
But that may be the softest, easiest landing spot. We'll support whatever you all decide.
And I think you mentioned the cafeteria situation. There'll be an effort to try to get the students maybe into a rotation in the cafeteria where they don't eat in the classroom.
And if you've been in our cafeterias, you've seen that there's spaces that students just don't sit in. But not everybody can go in the cafeteria every day, so we use that as a rotation. And I said before, I never would have thought sitting in a classroom that I'd get excited that today's the day we get to go to the cafeteria, but this is a different group. And for that matter, go out and eat on the picnic table or go somewhere else outside and to do those kinds of activities. And classes can be outside for that matter. There's no reason things have to be confined to a classroom unless weather is imposing the factor that we've got to deal with. But we'll have to look at all of those factors: movement, buses, the cafeteria, and how we're dealing with the bathrooms and the signage in our hallways and water fountains. We'll continue to do what we're doing with water fountains and fuel stations and all those things.
Any other comments? Any other questions of Dr. Phipps or Robert or Bill or anything?
If you want a recommendation from, and I know this is not binding, but just to have something for you to work off of. While I want 5 days, and that's where I want students to be, I would feel like we're at a place that we could work if we were back 4 days a week, K-12, with that Wednesday being reserved. Now, I have had some folks that asked about Friday being the day, and I just feel like that adds more confusion, and the Wednesdays for us seem to have worked. So that would be a recommendation for you to consider, and you can change that, or you can do whatever you want to do to that. That seems to me to be some soft landing spot for everyone involved that keeps something in place that's a little different, provides protection. Again, we don't know what the impact's going to be on middle and high school. That gives us a little bit of breathing room there on a Wednesday for whatever needs that we might have.
Dr. Phipps, can we have some discussion about timing? I know that spring break is somewhere on April 12th or 2nd to the 12th, which leaves us with 7 weeks left in the school year. My concern is with all of the logistical stuff that has to happen between the time that if the board decides to move into this plan that's been proposed and the time that it's implemented. Because I know for students who are coming back into the school that's not been there, there's having to teach those students the procedures and things that are in place, getting them adjusted to that, and then of course testing that's coming up. So can we have a conversation about timing?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. I think, once we make a decision, we seem to have a direction that we're going in. We have to look at the calendar. And the other thing that's in the law, I didn't mention this in the Senate Bill 220, is we're given the authority to create teacher work days to help with the transition. And some of that will be needed, but I think we can also be strategic when we look at our calendar. And the idea, I think many folks thought about looking at work days on maybe on the 12th and the 13th, which if we went back if we started this new schedule after spring break. And we certainly can't do it next week. The earliest we could do it would be the 29th, and my feeling is that's pushing it to try to get that done. And then you're in spring break after that. So if you were looking at a start date on April the 12th, which would be after spring break, if we had the 31st of March as a work day, which we already have it as a remote day, if we kept it that way, and you made April the 1st a teacher work day, then you would have the ability for 2 consecutive days for teachers to be able to do some things that need to be done in preparation of students coming back. And then we go into the Easter break and we're able to start back on the 12th and 13th with students in class, with the exception of Granite Falls Middle School. And we talked to you about Granite Falls Middle School. We're waiting to get the certificate of occupancy So there are things that we just cannot do in that building until we get that. And at some point, we'll have to have a couple of remote days that allow us to move furniture. But for the remainder of the staff, if we did it, I'd like you to look at the potential of doing it after, the work days ahead of spring break, which would really only cost us one. And then we'd have the students come back. The other option would be to put your work day on the Monday or Tuesday after we come back from break and then start students on a Wednesday. Chris, any thoughts on that, Baumgartner?
No, I'm just looking at in my calendar here, just trying to put all this together. So you're talking about, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong month. You're talking about starting it on which day?
On April the 12th, which will be the day that we come back from spring break.
Dr. Phipps, I had a discussion with some administrators.
Speak up.
I had some discussion with administrators, and that was a recommendation was prior to, and utilizing that. It does only cost us, if that's the decision that's made, it would only cost us one student day because that Wednesday is already a remote option. I think the thing that needs to be precluded and added is these would not be optional work days. These are to be work days and to be utilized in such to prepare ourselves to get ready, not the option to take an extended spring break there. So we need to make sure that how we work those things and what the expectation, ma'am.
They would not be remote days, they'd just be work.
They would be work days to prepare the building, classroom structures, whatever we needed to do, just without students there.
And the law gives us that authority in the Senate Bill 220.
Is that affected any, what days of the week are you talking about?
Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Wednesday and Thursday, and they had Friday off, so we're not affecting stuff. Somebody had planned vacation, their Friday could still be, everything could be good, but those 2 days, as you said, would be, if we chose that, you need to be in your building, get your room ready to start on April 12th.
If there's a downside to that, your B plan people have 2 weeks in a row off. Straight 2 weeks off. If we do that 31st and the 1st. Unless we split, that's what I was thinking, make A on Monday, B on Tuesday. If that's not too crazy.
You could, and the Thursday, Friday end of the calendar has taken a beating this year as we've looked at days that are out. So your point is well taken, that our B students have not had the same number of days in class as our A students have. And that clearly would be a B day because it's Thursday, April 1st.
So if there's a consideration to do that too, the beauty of it though, if the decision is made to go back to a plan A, is finally for the first time this entire school year, starting on that Monday, you have a consistent week versus coming back from Easter and then not coming back whole, coming back in partial week again. You can finally, after Easter, come back on a consistent day of academic work to be produced. Whereas A, B, that you're absolutely right. There's been a lot of discussion about B students that have kind of taken the brunt of the piece, but you could swap however we look at it. But I think the first thing is determining what plan, and then ultimately, if there is a plan, a number of days, and then ultimately from there, work days to prepare for that plan.
I think that's my biggest concern there is just the logistical challenges. And do you feel like Dr. Phipps, Dr. Griffin, Dr. McKellen, do you feel like with starting, if we go to plan A, starting back April the 12th, is that enough time? I know that teachers and administrators and all of you have been pushed and challenged and had to adapt in so many ways this year, and it's so appreciated. But do you feel like logistically that's feasible?
Yes, given the notice that we would have if the decisions made today and getting that word out, I think that week of the 29th and 30th, it's important to let parents know as early as we can too, if there's going to be any change in the schedule. But Chris, I don't want to suppose and suggest that implementation will be perfect. When we start on the 12th, there are going to be things that we have to tweak. And just like we do at the beginning of any school year, or for that matter, at the beginning of the semester. So we will be as ready as we possibly can be on the 12th. But if you extended it out 4 more weeks, there's still going to be things that we would tweak when we implement because you don't know exactly what's going to happen until you do it.
we had discussion even this morning in administrative meeting that, you know, and I think with anything, until you set a date, you'll find something else that'll preclude you from moving forward with something else. But by setting whatever date that may be, certainly there'll be challenges. I think some principals are worried that it won't be perfect. And so we have to assure them and our teachers that we won't have perfection in week one. It'll be almost like starting a new school year, and we'll have to adapt to some of those different challenges. So I think, yes, Chris, I think to answer your question, yes, it'll be difficult, and yes, there'll be things that we'll have to alter, and we may even have to change, but I think that it's certainly doable. It just probably won't be perfect.
But if we go back to July, whenever we voted to open the schools, we were all scared to death. We were all worried. We were all, is this gonna happen? And I think it come to the conclusion, we couldn't wait for the first day to get there to find out what the new challenge was. Because we knew there was gonna be challenges. And we've had those challenges at every point and juncture this year. This is another. And whenever they open up, or if we choose to open up for Plan A, there's gonna be obstacles to overcome. And, you know, I think that one thing we've had to learn as a system, not as a school board or administrators, but we've all had to learn that it's a new adaptation to something different. Because we just don't know. And I'm so proud of the way that people have risen to the occasion. From, you can start at any direction you want. Every person that has been associated with the schools, from the students to the faculty to paid employees to volunteers, I'm proud to be part of Caldwell County schools, because I talk to my peers in other counties, and they're catching up, but they're having to catch up because the rules will change. And I'm not downplaying them, because that was a decision best for their county, but I've had somebody call that said, how did you do that? You know, what did you do? And I told them there was a lot of anxiety and fear, and, you know, studies done, and we went with it, and we realized we would have to adapt if we needed to. So, you know, whatever we choose, as Dr. Phipps said earlier, there's people that aren't going to like what happens. You know, some want 5 days, some want 4, some want to leave it like as it is. You know, so the decisions that have been made are trying to be what's best for the majority of people, the students first, the faculty first, and then we can move from there.
Dr. Phipps, adding to what Joe has said, if I understand the calendar correctly, and I don't have one in front of me, but Wednesday, the 30th,
31st.
the 31st is a Wednesday, and then the 1st is a Thursday, and then Friday is Good Friday. Okay, I wanted to be sure. And so that would give them those 2 days, and then the rest of the time. And we have 2 other schools that would affect also, but it wouldn't change them, the 2 other high schools.
Early college and CASA. They're going to be treated perhaps a little differently, particularly the students that are in the college classes.
Yes.
We do need to work with them to make sure that we don't throw them out of whack. For students that are taking college classes and then have to be monitored just to be there to do that, that came up in a conversation. And I think because of where we're at on our schedule, I can't expect a community college to pivot and make a change to match hours. So I think we have to allow those students some liberty, and I'm willing to work with the principals there to make sure that we're able to do that best we can.
So again, that's an administrative decision that will be taken care of.
Because they'll be county present, they'll be in school, but they're doing a lot of their stuff online.
Yes.
And their presence may not be personally in the building or on campus, but they can still be taking classes, and we'll work with them. I don't want it to be a hardship in terms of putting something in place. And that's why we try to have these conversations ahead of time, and that was one. I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you.
Well, if we go to Plan A, I think it's gonna be important to have the 2 work days together, so that, you know, they can get their work done in 2 days rather than transitioning over a weekend or waiting till after the break. So the idea of having the Wednesday, the 31st, and April the 1st on a Thursday sounds like a good option there. And then they can come back on the 12th, and start the whole week afresh. And, we deal with whatever situations come up at that point in time. But I think it's important to have those 2 work days together, and that may be the most appropriate days, even though it affects those that are on schedule B at this point.
But I think what Teresa's advice, 2 points I think are good. The 31st of March and the 1st of April would be teacher work days. They're not optional teacher work days, they're teacher work days, and they're not remote learning days, because the teachers aren't gonna have, I hope on a remote learning day, teachers are invested and they're involved with students. They don't have time on these 2 days to do anything other than get the rooms ready and things like that. And I would like to make the recommendation that we would make Tuesday, the 30th of March, a B day instead of an A day. That would just give us 1 A and 1 B on that week, and then we have the teacher work days, and then spring break, and then hopefully we can start back fresh and be able to get through the school year without any problems.
It's not going to cause any logistical problems at all to do that.
The bus route that would normally run on Tuesday would be the route that would run on Thursday.
Okay.
The only logistical issue I could see would be making sure that we're making parents aware of that slight schedule change.
So is the calendar change for everybody, elementary included, or just middle and high?
The elementary teachers don't need to move furniture. They've got students back 4 days a week. So there's going to be a higher demand on getting rooms set up for middle and high school students.
Because would the elementary schedule change at all?
Depends on what part of the plan.
Bus routes would potentially change.
Bus routes shouldn't for an elementary student unless we're picking up other students on the bus. I have to look at our routes.
If we're gonna make April the 1st a work day, then everybody's gonna be out April the 1st?
Well, they already are because it's a remote learning day.
No, that's
No,
April the
they're on the
1st.
31st. That's the question that Teresa has.
Right.
Is, would that apply also to our elementary students? Because the shift that has to be made at the elementary level, there is a shift, but it's not, well, they're still going 4 days, they're just gonna do what they've been doing all along, which is significant, great work, but it's not different, when they come back from spring break.
Right.
If we keep Wednesday as a planning day.
I'm not advocating, I'm just
Right.
clarifying.
Clarification.
Well, it'd just be that 1 day first.
So it could be, it could be a work day for middle and high school students. But then you got some K-8 students that would be out, and I don't know what that does to
I
families.
think we need to be consistent if we made that you'll have to go. Although,
And they're required work days.
Required work days. The point is to be there, particularly middle and high school, to get your rooms ready and furniture moved and all the other things that have to be done in preparation of having a full class when we come back from spring break. But elementary's already doing it.
So elementary on the 31st would be doing what they normally do then.
That gives us a Wednesday that we don't have, so.
Now, as to what Teresa said, is the first going to be a normal day for K-5, or is that going to be a work day for?
How do you feel about that? I mean, it's a good point. I think it creates some confusion among family members. You've got a 7th grader not going and a 4th grader going. I would rather keep them together if we could.
it's 1 day.
Yeah, I'd say for consistency, we should.
Just having a work day there.
Make it a work day for
Best
everybody.
option.
Yeah, I'm good with that, I just.
That's a good question.
Clarify.
Everything's messy. There's not anything. If it's easy, we'd all be doing it. We wouldn't have a problem.
Well, that brings up the point too, is the 31st if we're gonna have the middle and high schools have a work day on the 31st and the 1st, or the K-5's gonna have their remote on the 31st.
I think it should stay the same.
Okay. And so the only day that would be effective would be the 1st.
Right.
And that would be a work day for everybody.
Well, are we changing Wednesday to a work day versus a remote day
It would be
For-
for middle and high
for
school.
middle and high, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you'll let us work through that, we'll get the language on so that it's clear and we make sure we have those needs that are met.
So those kinds of things we need to vote on at some juncture, but that would probably come up in our.
Well, I know we're not gonna have another meeting
Before meeting before then.
Maybe we
We
would
can
just
just
make a
allow that to
motion
be
to,
administrative.
Well, we want you to know what we're looking at, those 2 days in question and how we're gonna work those. And we'll get the wording on that, but there are gonna be days that students aren't gonna be in school.
well, we know that the middle and high school is gonna be a work day. We know that Thursday, for Olive is gonna be a work day. The only question is really what to do on the elementary side of that equation. And, you know, if we, you know, y'all have led us to this point, and I'm not sure that I would question what your decision was, whether you said the teachers in elementary are gonna do remote, or they're gonna do a work day for that Wednesday. I mean, I think whatever we do today, if we're gonna do anything, I think that decision needs to be made, even if it's to let y'all make that decision, how to word that day on the calendar. Because we don't have another meeting to meet, another time to meet, and I feel confident y'all are gonna do what you feel like is gonna be the best for the system, or something like that.
So do we need to have a vote on that, a vote to give you the administrative authority to address those days?
Do you have a preference on what they're called, Katrina? I think we can go ahead and decide that now and then get the word out.
I know that a couple elementary schools have kindergarten screening already scheduled on that Wednesday, which this would not, I mean, they would still do it, whether it was remote learning or a planning day, we would still continue with kindergarten screening. I think the other thing, and Jeff's not here, is I wonder about our number of hours for the year. If we need to have it counted
Well,
as
I think with the
remote.
General Assembly giving us this.
Oh, wait, that's the leeway, okay.
So we're only,
I was just reading that law and it says that local boards may revise the existing school calendar for the 2021 school year to reschedule teacher workdays to be used for this. So I don't think the way I read that is at the given moment, that would not include those hours, that they're allowing us to make whatever changes to the calendar if the question, and if plan A is where we go to get there. So I don't know if it would matter remote or not remote.
I don't know if it's confusing. I'd rather the elementary teachers have the remote day on the 31st and then a teacher work day on the 1st. That keeps that as consistent as we can. For middle and high school, the 31st and the 1st would be teacher work days.
So do we need a motion to that effect, that we make?
Well,
We've got to decide.
We got to decide on the-
Well, I know, but yeah, you're right.
That would be a schedule change.
I'm just asking a question before we get to the other part.
Yes,
I think we probably need to do that at some juncture here. Okay, you have heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Does someone have a motion according to that, or have another motion, or whatever? Do we have a motion?
Chairman Pennell, I'd like to make a motion that we return to Plan A modified 4 days a week with Wednesday remaining as a remote cleaning day.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. Any questions or comments about that?
Can we make sure,
Can I ask a clarification?
can we say remote
Learning
learning?
day,
slash-
that was my question. Can we
Yes.
say remote learning day rather than remote cleaning day?
Remote learning day, yes, correct, yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anyone? So we have a motion and a second. That we go to a 4-day week for, will it be across the board? We're already, the K-5, would it be for the middle school and the high school? and that Wednesday will remain as a virtual and cleaning day.
You want your motion to have the starting date?
Yeah, it needs to change.
So I didn't know if we were going to do that separate, but yes, starting, was it April the 12th?
Well,
Starting April the 12th, yes.
okay.
With the March the 31st being a teacher's
Okay, we
day.
don't include all that.
Can somebody write me a paragraph, please?
Have you got it? We know the first part, you got the,
With start date of April the 12th, with teacher work days of March the 31st and April the 1st.
Elementary would have a remote day on the 31st.
Elementary having a remote day on the 31st. Do we need to have in there the AB switch?
We can, and yes.
Well, it's 29.
For A students on the 29th and B on the 30th.
God, why not? Yeah, A students on the 29th
Yes.
and B students on the 30th.
Right.
Can you repeat that for us, Chairman?
okay. The motion is to go to 4-day in middle school and high school. And that the work days be the 31st and the 1st for the middle school and high school. That the K-5s will have their normal schedule on the 31st, and they will have a work day on the 1st. And that the 29th of March will be a day for Group A, and the 30th, Tuesday, would be Group B. Did I miss anything?
For middle and high school.
That's,
And the start date of the 12th.
and start day would be April 12th, as we come back from the Easter break.
One other clarifying question, the pre-K, do we need to say there is just no change in
They
pre-K?
can go on 5 days
Yes,
a week.
but,
We're not changing anything.
yes, but if we, do we need that in?
When we say K-12, then we're not included. And that's a good thing to do.
Okay, so that is the motion, and Teresa, you seconded the first one. Are you in agreement with the second, or?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion passes unanimously.
I want to stress that nothing is easy. And there are really wide-ranging, not just opinions, but emotions. I mean, people that really have emotional, visceral reaction to the topics that we're talking about, and I appreciate that. And I hope whether you're on one side or the other, or if you're right in the middle with the decision that the board has made, that you'll support our work moving forward and continue to work with us as a community to be as strong as we can, as successful in our school implementation as possible. So thank you all.
Well, I want to thank the board for all the work that you've done. And certainly the staff has just gone way beyond any expectations. And the teachers and cafeteria workers, bus drivers, everybody, we are blessed to live in Caldwell County. It's a great place, and everybody's pulled together, and it has not been easy. I mean, board members have spoken to that, Dr. Phipps has spoken to that. It has not been easy at all. It's been a tough year for everybody. But we'll get through it. We're gonna all work together, and one of these days, we will be back to normal again. But thank you for all that you have done. Without any other business, do I hear a motion we adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
We will be sending the form to DHHS to let them know what the intent is. And then if I've never done that before, I don't know if there'll be any feedback. We'll follow that.